Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Tim McMullen. I think most of you on here have talked to me before or seen me before. This week, I'm really excited about doing this one because this is something I've stumbled upon the past several months, or really the past several years, but it's just kind of a progression of what we've learned about AI and what we've learned about taking content that we've always used, right? Everything you guys are using in the ECM world to making it ready for AI. So my journey with this is, y'all know, I manage the Grooper team on this from the sales side, but I've also been involved in the industry since the mid '90s. So this is essentially all I've ever done professionally. Came out of the technical side, so I've always stayed very close on the technical side to the technology as it evolves. And the last 3 years or 3.5 years, the evolution around large language models and AI has been just amazing. I'm just really excited about it. I got to speak this week at an IT conference that was very, very well received. So I'm taking that same message kind of out to everybody I can. And the key is that we're finding that what you've been historically doing with your documents, the way you're storing them into your application extender or FileNet or SharePoint or whatever, even network drives, how you're storing them was designed for retrieval. So you put a handful of fields so you can find it again, or you're pulling off just enough content to start that workflow. But you're not those same documents aren't designed, or you haven't pulled off enough information to really get the best out of AI. And I'm going to show you that today and kind of show you how you can use the same tools, Grooper, plus the LLMs, to actually get there from here, right? Because it isn't about re-indexing all your content. It's about augmenting what you already have. But you also don't want to add all this extra data that we're going to pull off back into your ECM repository, most likely, because you're not really going to do retrievals based on sentiment or based on things or based on a summary. That's just not something that's going to happen. So let me go ahead and stop sharing this and let's go ahead and get started. Okay. And real quick, sorry, I jumped right into it without giving my team props. So we've got Brad and Colin here to help me with the logistics behind the scenes. So if you have any questions, everybody's mic's muted on these things, but feel free, please jump into the Q&A and put your question in there, and Brad will flag me, interrupt me, throw something at me, and get me to answer the questions live while we go through this. So I always want to keep these very open. So if you have a question, please feel free to answer it, or feel free to ask it, and I will do my best to get it answered during the session. Alrighty, so let me go ahead and share out my Grooper session so I can kind of show you what's going on here. And I think this is the right one. Okay, let me just refresh to make sure haven't talked too long. Okay, so what you're looking at is, again, this is Grooper with an AI assistant. We're going to show some of the AI assistants today, but a lot of what today's going to be around is going to be how we're using AI to augment this data. So we're going to spend a lot of time with the AI extract and seeing how we can pull that out. But to demonstrate what's going on here, I want to show you this. So I've got two resume assistants here. This one is nothing more than 2,700, I think 2,300 resumes that have been OCR'd, right? So they're full text indexed. They're up into a vector index, like everything we're doing with around the assistants today. So what I want to do is give you try to show you what this looks like. Okay, because what we'll see here is you're going to see a variation in what comes back. Sometimes what comes back between data that's been well segmented and data that's just a bunch of full text is going to be subtle. Sometimes it's going to be drastic. All right, so let me start off with this question. And so you guys don't have to be punished through my trying to talk and type at the same time. I've got these questions already copied out here. So if you see me change it over to another screen, that's what I'm doing. All right, so the first one we're going to do, again, this collection of documents, of resumes, has no real segmentation to it. Think of 2,300 resumes that you just full texted, and now they're vector indexed, which is phenomenal. And now you're going to ask the AI some questions about it. So I'm going to say, all right, show me resumes with only 5+ years in analytics. And very quickly get back some interesting answers, right? So I get back, and this is why we love these assistants. So it's given me the people that it thinks fit this requirement. But notice if you look through these, it's figuring this out, which I really like about this technology is this is inference, right? This is where this really separates from keyword search. Is I've asked for 5+ years in a specific domain, and it's not looking for somebody who puts 5 years on their resume. It has to figure that out. It has to infer that from the dates on their resume. And again, my footnotes, so I have you'll notice we've made up names on these, so when we pulled these in, so don't worry about that. These were public records, so we just pulled them down from Kaggle. This is where we got these documents to do these demos with. But as I pull through these, you see, okay, not bad. Okay, this is not bad. I could live with this. But let me show you the difference now. So now I'm going to go to my resume helper that is, well, you'll see how much more indexed it is. We'll have to dive into that in a second here. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so same exact question. I want to highlight that this is the same question. I'm using the same large language model. The only thing different is the index data. So in this case, what I'm getting back is, first of all, I'm getting back more details. Okay, also, you can see how it's just segmented a little bit better. So let's go back and take a quick look. So here's my first one. I get 3 candidates back. Notice, because the names are in the actual file names, they're not actually on the resume, it can't actually pull a lot of that detailed information out, but it is pulling out those here. That's why these say that have the name here, because we actually put that name in the file name. But since that hasn't been pulled off as an index field, the LLM is going to struggle to actually figure that out. So there's this subtle piece here where LLMs do a phenomenal job at figuring out from content. So if I give it all this full text data, it can figure that out. But what makes it even better is some context around that data, which again is what you're seeing here. So when I come into this, and you can see I get, first of all, I'm getting their names, which was pulled out because that's been indexed now. I'm getting industry. I'm getting a little bit more information on each one of these. And as I come into these resumes, right, you'll see that it actually highlights where it's finding this information, because I'm actually asking it something that it's finding. Right, so it's obviously looked at the whole resume. So it's a subtle difference, but notice I'm getting back different answers. That's the big thing I wanted to focus on here. So let's do a couple more of these, and these will get increasingly complex for the algorithm to figure out, or the large language model to figure out. Okay, so this next one, let's filter out people without a college degree. Again, and I don't even think, honestly, in either one of these, I don't have college degree as one of the fields. So this is also interesting in how much better the models work once you have more context. So again, so you see it did pull this name out from this one. So it is able sometimes to find these names. Why it didn't do it on the previous one? That's a great question. That's one of the challenges of LLMs, is that sometimes they can be not very consistent. The more data you have to hand to them, because again, we're using retrieval augmented generation here. We're handing it the information. We're asking questions about that information. So it should be able to be a little bit more consistent. And it would be. If I only used this assistant, I'm going to get this level of consistency. But now if I come in here, let's do the exact same question. Again, let me clear that out. And again, what you'll see is, let's go back and look. I think we're going to get a little bit different match here, or possibly the same match here. I wasn't paying that close attention, to be honest with you. Let's look. Okay, we got Jessica, Aria, and Jasper on this one. And on this one, we have different people. So this is probably the best example I'm going to show today of how segmenting this data, or augmenting this data, is going to get you better results, right? So now let's go back and look. Are these bad results? So if I'm looking for people, are these, they have BAs. Every one of these have BAs. No problem, right? This is not bad. So, but the differences here are what you have to really look at. And I'm not really trying to show this as an end-all solution. What I'm trying to get through to y'all is that we have to think through what our assistant's use is going to be, what our AI usage is going to be, and we have to make sure that data exists in the document set, or in the data set. And if it doesn't, we have this gap, and part of this today is to figure out how to close that gap for you. All right. So we'll do one more of these and then we'll move on, because this is another one that takes a little bit even more. Let me just refresh this so we get off of here. All right, so we're on the right one, my resume chaos. And then we'll go look at how this is set up so y'all can see I'm not lying to you. So who has experience managing international accounting or multilingual reporting? So it's got a two-part question. And again, these aren't bad answers. I can look through this and say, okay, extensive experience in preparing complex financial statements and intermanual reports for banks and holding companies with a focus on international. That sounds like what I was looking for. Let's go see how Resume Helper works. Same question. We need the Jeopardy music in between here, I think. Okay, so again, I want to point out that I'm going to get slightly different versions. We have Samira, Isabella, and 2 Isabellas, because there's actually 2 Isabellas in here, as it turns out. That was not a mistake. Again, I'm getting different people. I really want to highlight on that the model is actually picking different people, because it has better context on the second one. So as I look through these, we saw one of those answers. So let's look closer at one of these. So you notice what I'm getting here. I'm not just getting a summary. I'm getting brings over 18 years of accounting experience with a strong background in handling. This is a much better assistant. It's like I've got the intern versus the expert. That's really the difference of what I'm seeing here, right? So let's take a look at these two assistants really quickly, and then we'll go to another one. So here's the Resume Chaos one. Very, very straight setup. I just have a simple prompt here. And if we look at this is the actual data model. Sorry, I didn't need to do that. This is the actual data model. There's nothing here. There's no fields at all. So this is an extreme example, obviously, because I'm trying to prove a point, right? And if we look at the better one, so let me come to my other one here. So here's my resume's data model for the one that we're looking at. You can see there's a lot of data here. So let me bring one of these up. Let me just have it redo one of these really quickly because these are actually in different, and you're going to be like that. Okay, let me grab a different document set. It doesn't like that. It doesn't like that because that's not actually the right document type. I had to actually do different document types to make this work. So there we go. So now you can see all the information that's here. Actually, I'm going to do one more because I added a field here that in the last 3 months, I'm a really big proponent of adding a summary field for documents that you're trying to retrieve like this because it really gives the model context. And the summary field is only like 150 words or less. I think that's the command I have or the description I have in there. So now what we have is, again, just a ton of information. The key here being that these LLMs, yeah, they can figure this out on their own. But if you make an LLM figure this out on its own, you are opening the door to wrong information, hallucinations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I cannot stress that enough. That's where this stuff comes from. So you have your document set. You need to enhance that document set with more information to get the answers you want. When we come down here, why don't I have my summary? Or do I have my summary and I'm missing it? Oh, it's up. I moved it up top. That's why. So I have a nice summary of this. This does a phenomenal job now for an assistant. Okay. So I'm going to show you one more example, and then we're going to talk about how we use this stuff. I'm going to make sure I'm on time, how we use the technology to get better at technology. So I'm going to rush through this one because I want to make sure we get to the other stuff. So let me close out some of this so it's not so confusing for y'all because it does get a bit overwhelming. All right. So the next one we're going to look at is from our buddies down at Funeral Directors Life in Abilene. We just went down there to see them. You're going to hear more from them because they're just kicking ass and taking names. So here's what I've got that I've added to this initial system. When we imported their website, right? So we imported the title, the author date, and the URL. Fantastic. And the assistant works really, really well. So I can come in here to my two assistants. So here's my initial funeral helper, and they have this hanging off of, they have a blog that they write called funeralbasics.org, I think is what it's called. And basically, if you're going through, if you need a funeral for someone, you don't know where to start. I mean, how often do you plan a funeral, right? So the idea was to put this on their website so people could navigate the 15-year-old blog that they have all this information out there. It's obviously there's a lot of data. So that's what they're starting with. So the same type of thing here. So the kind of questions they get is some of it's preparatory. So, right. So how do I start? So it'll be, how do I start planning for my funeral? Oh, let me get the markdown stuff out of there. Any questions yet, Brad?
Nope, none yet.
Okay.
And you all can submit those through the question and answer
panel
feature on the bottom of your Zoom there. That's how you can do that.
Exactly. If I didn't mention that, sorry. So again, I want to highlight that this is a good assistant. There's nothing wrong with this information. If I were in need and I looked at this, it's like, hey, you know what? This is a good set of, this tells me what I need. And it pulled this all, and I've got my links back to their actual blog. So I can hit here and it's going to actually take me to the website that found that information. Same thing on this one. Oh, look at that. Helps me with pre-planning. It pulls me right to the sections. This is powerful. Don't get me wrong, but it could be better. And I'm one of those people that always likes to make things a little bit better, especially in this age of AI where you can keep iterating, because that really is the power of this, is the almost nonstop iteration that you can do. So we're going to ask the same question now of the enhanced assistant. Again, the only difference here is I pulled off a lot more fields, and I'm going to show you how I figured out those fields, what fields to pull off next. So as you go through this, notice the tone here. All of a sudden, the tone is more gentle. Right? It's a little bit, it's very subtle in its response. The response is the same essentially, but it's got a little bit more empathy to it, right? It's a better answer at the end of the day. So let's switch gears here because I do not want to run out of time going through this. So one of the big challenges, all right, you're listening to me. If I'm you, I'm looking at this and thinking, okay, great, Tim. So you've told me that my data isn't good enough. Well, I know it's taken me years to get all this data. How am I going to make my data better? Right? Fair question. So what we're going to have to do in this, let me get back to my stuff here, is we're going to need to add information to your data model. But we're going to cheat because we are going to use the technology to make the technology better. So this is where the fill method, the AI extract fill method really comes in handy. So here we go. So all I've done, so I added, again, remember I added core concepts, emotional tone tags, intent or purpose, targeted audience, and then of course my favorite, the post summary. And I've got those linked, so it's pulling off that information. I'm not pulling off the title or URL because that's automatically done. And then I've got my very fancy instruction here of extract the information. Basically, what I'm telling you to do is to help it understand this. That's it. That's all I had to do. So when I reprocess these documents, oops, I just spilled. When I reprocess these documents, excuse me there, when I get my laptop out of the water, when I reprocess these documents, the technology is going to pull that information out for me. Okay, so I don't have to manually index all of my data. That's the key I really want to get to, is that's going to be the, really this is what we're looking at. So once I've done that, it gets reindexed automatically. That information gets forward. So you may be asking, well, how do I know? How did I know to add core concepts? How did I know to add intent or purpose? How did I know to add these extra pieces? Well, that's another very good question. So the neat thing, again, is we're using the technology to help us. So I have got a Grooper LLM advisor here. So let me see if I can find the prompt I gave it to tell me, how do I make you better? So I do, it's down here. Okay. So this is the key, is I basically asked it, okay, you know what? I'm importing a website and I want to know how to make this better. What do I need to do? So this assistant is nothing but it's an assistant inside of Grooper. It's got access to Grooper, all Grooper help files, all Grooper information, and it's using the latest and greatest OpenAI LLM. So again, I can't stress enough, asking the technology how to make it better is a best practice. Okay, I stumbled onto a Stanford adjunct professor this week who gives classes in this and teaching people how to do this and how to iterate based on this. So I can ask it what to do here. So what to extract from blog articles. Okay, let me see. Look at this. Let me know if you'd like field-specific examples. Yes, I would. I'm not even going to say anymore. I'm just going to say yes, because again, this is how you interact with these things now. You don't need to say please and thank you, right? There's no reason to do that. There we go. This is what I was getting at. So now what you have here is now I have, okay, here's not only the fields, but it's giving me descriptions that I can take the description and I can take that and copy that into the description for the actual data field. So we're not quite there where I can actually say, generate this for me. Obviously, that's where we're going to be going. We do have the ability to generate the data model from a prompt. And I bet you I could take this and say, I could take this and say, generate this data model, and it would do this and put all these in. So we're getting, if you're not leveraging the technology to make yourself better, you're just missing this huge part of it. So let's go back and look at my resume one, the first one we did, because I did the exact same thing on the resumes. So you saw my store and retrieve where I have essentially nothing. So let's go look at the one that the dev team built. And again, you see all that information, right? Work experience, education, all of this information, a simple AI fill using the same model, using a very simple prompt or instructions. These aren't prompts. We make the prompt for you. You don't have to know anything about prompting. You just need to tell it what you're trying to do. And then 23 data elements are being pulled off. And every one of these, when they get passed to the vector index, it gets context, right? So I get industry, it says industry and this industry. So that all signifies to the LLM what this means. It gives even more meaning to it and context to it, and that helps with these answers. And that's really what you're getting.
Hey, Ted.
Yes.
We have a question.
Of course.
So Alan asks, could you briefly describe how Grooper integrates with Azure LLMs to enable features like AI Extract, LLM Table Reader, and AI Assistant for enhanced document processing with minimal setup? Thank you for your insights. benefits?
Absolutely. So great question. And how we do it, so let me back up. So how we really do it at the top level of the model, or the top level of your repository. So this repository is called 2025 Demo Workstation. So this is a repository setting. So when we first came out with our LLM integrations, you had to set it up per extractor. So you had something called GPT Complete. Now we call it Ask AI, and that extractor is still there, but you don't really need to use it if you're using AI Extract. What you have to do, you have to grab your LLM connector key. So in this case, I'm using internally GCS, which we have a cloud piece that we haven't put out yet. But I can connect to anything that supports OpenAI's API. And as you can see, this could be NVIDIA directly. This could be a company called OpenRouter, OpenAI, of course, or anybody else that does these. You can also connect to local ones. If I have an Azure, if I've deployed one through Azure, you get this same. Azure has its own thing. You don't have all the models access. You deploy them one at a time through Azure. And if somebody needs help with that, please call me if you're not familiar with the Azure portal, because they've made it really, really, really difficult, and I can help you through that. But you basically you deploy it, and you deploy what type it is, and it's usually a chat session, and you just put in your information here. Once that's set up, this model is now available to anything in this repository that uses that. For AI search, it's the same similar connection. That's it. I basically point it at, when I deploy this through Azure, which this is actually much simpler to deploy, it gives me an API key and a URL. I plug it in here, and I can actually come in and see, okay, I've got 35 of my 50 indexes used. I get some information that I can see here as well. So I think that was the first part of your question. There was a second part there as well, as connecting it to the actual pieces. Yeah. So let me go back to where I was. So now that I have that license, it's exposed to me. So now under the model, anywhere you see model now, I can actually come in and select anything I have licensed. So you saw I had 4 or 5 of those in there. All of these models will show up here. I'm working on with Dev to get us a little disclaimer in there, or a little sort of indicator so you can see where it came from. But right now, these are all of the models I have access to, including fine-tuned models, because again, Grooper can fine-tune models for you directly into OpenAI. And if you haven't played with fine-tuning, we're seeing 10 to 15% increase on top of everything else we're doing in accuracy just by a fine-tuned model. And you need at least 10 documents to fine-tune, and honestly, that it makes a huge difference, and it lowers your cost significantly. So you just grab your model in here. I'm using 4.1. That's only been out a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. It's the kind of thing you got to stay in front of, but a lot of the conversations I've had with clients that are using this, they're not really playing around with anything but the OpenAI models, because they're so good and they're so cheap that there's really no reason to go anywhere else, right? Unless you have extreme privacy issues and you have to deploy it locally, and that's a whole different animal. I think I answered all the question on that. Did that cover it all?
Yeah, he asked about AI Extract, LLM Table Reader, and AI Assistant. Yeah.
Yep. And those are all part of the same thing. So AI Extract will do all of that. The table reader you can set up. Do I have a table on here? Hold on. Let me go to when I put a table on. I can show you. You don't have to use the table reader. We brought the table reader out because it gives you a little bit more granular control. So I've got one here that has a table in it. This is receipts. So let me switch over here so you can see my receipts. There we go. And we get down here to one that I like the German ones. There's a lot of beer on these. So in this case, this little table that I set up, I'm not using anything on the table. I just gave it a description. Right, so the AI Extract is set up at the top level method on this, and it does all of the tables as well. So where you need to use table extract, this is where the kind of the trial and error comes in. Is you have to see if you have a very complicated table, it may make more sense to have a separate table reader than the entire AI Extract. So to set that up, I would simply come in here. I would basically tell it its extract method is the LLM table reader. I would come in and grab my model. Do not use the default model. It is 3.5 years old, and in this industry, that might as well be a lifetime. And that's about it at that point. This is what you do. You do one of the tips with the LLM stuff. Do less than you're used to. Do as little as possible and then test. Oh, it doesn't like that. I left something blank. So yeah, initial row count. Some of these have to be filled out. I apologize there. And also notice we have. Oh, that's why I didn't fill out the fill method. You do still have to tell the fill method to use it. So you can see how this can be it can get complicated, but it's just walking through the pieces. So let me make sure I get my data elements. If you leave it blank like that, it will do all of them, but I never trust that, so I always do this. There we go. This should work a little bit better. Nope, it doesn't like me today. So apologize for that. I will have to figure that out later. I left something empty that it doesn't like, and that's actually probably a bug, so I need to go report that. But that would be how you'd set up the table reader. And again, when you use a table reader versus when you don't is a very, very subtle difference, is what it boils down to. Okay, let me clear these out. So in essence, I want to go back to using this idea of using the technology to enhance the technology. So when I come here and say, okay, I've got a receipts database, right? Oh, you guys had to see me type. This is what I was trying to avoid. And I'm being vague intentionally because I'm trying to prove a point. The less vague you are on this, obviously, the better it works. But I'm trying to prove a point that it can figure this stuff out. And again, notice it's Grooper friendly, right? It's telling me all the things you're going to want out of here. Now, if I give it more direction of what I'm doing with that data, it will actually take that and make that even better. And then I can take this information and import it directly in to create that data model from. And we're at the bottom of the hour, so I want to be respectful of time. Do we have any other questions, Brad?
That's it right now.
Okay, so let me show you where this thing was set up, because I think the best thing you can all do if you're on 2025, this is included in the product. All you got to do is turn it on, and you can see, okay, from that little prompt, let's go through, we're going to go a little bit over here. But from that prompt, look at the detailed information I have on how to set up my piece here. So it's a great question. Let's ask it. What's the difference? Oh, God, this is painful. Between AI extract, I got to call that something else. All right, so let's see really quickly what that comes back with, and then I'll show you real quickly how this was set up, because it's really, really easy to set up. Come on, there you go. So this is now, again, we've added Grooper Help as an option on every assistant. It's on by default. So some use cases I turn it off. I don't need my resumes assistant. It doesn't need to know about Grooper, so I turned it off. But for this, you can deploy a Grooper expert inside of your own Grooper environment with a couple clicks. And we're gonna do that as soon as it's done babbling here. And I could have told it to be brief. For any of you who haven't had a lot of experience with the LLMs, if you'd like to come up to speed on this, please look for me, send me an email, get on my calendar, and I'll give you 30 minutes or an hour of everything I've learned in the past 3.5 years about how to use these technologies successfully in productivity to enhance your productivity, because these are amazing. I mean, so it's giving me information here that I would look through much more thorough than I just was. And how you set that up so we can end this thing is, let me get to my assistants. Again, this was really, really straightforward. I created a new assistant, gave it the model, latest and greatest. Everything else is default. I basically just told it, you're an advanced Grooper assistant, right? Your job is to make, sorry about that. Your job is to make things better for me. And that's it. You can play around with these, right? Do not reply with JSON. I don't want it to, because I had one where it was showing me all the JSON I should build and all this stuff. I don't need to know that. So you do have to tell it sometimes what you don't want. One last little secret, and then we'll let you go. When you get things you want it to do or don't want it to do, these are statistical models. So they work better if you do something like this. And you notice these little asterisks before this is in Markdown. So this is two dirty little secrets. If you repeat what you want or what you don't want, that will greatly weight the responses. Okay, these are statistical models. So if you keep repeating things, it will be more prone to do what you ask. Although the 4.1 model, a lot of the breakthroughs on that has been to stick to the prompts. And the other one is if you highlight things with Markdown, it understands the importance. And Markdown is very, very simple. It's like to make this, that's just highlighted. But if I wanted to make it an H1, it's like one, that's basically an H1, something like that. So those are two real quick tips. Before we bring this down, Brad, do we have any other questions?
Nope, you answered everything.
Okay, you guys were quiet today. And I know that this is a deep subject, so I just want to reiterate that your data as it sits in your ECM today is not ideal for LLMs. It will work. It will give you answers. They won't be the best answers. But you can use the technology, Grooper, to enhance that data as you put it into the AI search vector database. And you can use the technology to help you understand how those changes need to be made. So it's quite amazing. And again, as always, everyone, if you have any questions, comments, I just want to get on my time to have a discussion on this personally, please feel free to reach out. Don't be shy. I love doing this stuff. So I'd be happy to talk with every one of you about this. So thanks everybody for attending. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for the support, and we will talk to you next time. Thanks much.